Hey, this is Jody with another weekly video. This week is highlights from Fabtech 2013 in Chicago, but along with that, I'm going to clip in a few clips from previous videos where it makes sense and has to do with the products and stuff that I saw at Fabtech that I thought you would be interested in. So one of the first booths that I stopped at was the Jackson booth. It had this display of their new Jackson Balder helmets, and I'm putting a link in the description box of this YouTube video, which will take you to a page on CyberWeld, which outlines a rebate program. There's a $100 rebate program on this model that I'm using in this video. Right here, it is the WH70BH3 model, and there's some other rebate offers anyway. Anyway, they're good until the end of 2013, till the last day of 2013. So go check it out. And I do like the helmet. It ranks up there with some of the better ones that I've used, and I've used quite a few of them. Now this is a little review here, me doing some pulse TIG using a torch switch and with the downslope set so that it tapers off just a little bit. The downslope is set to about 2 or 3 seconds, just where it tapers off a little bit before I can move around 1/8 of an inch or so and hit that trigger. And so that's a little review of that, and I'm going to clip some of these clips like this in along as we go. Now, a little news here. Thermal Arc is now Tweco. They've rebranded. They're kind of Victor is kind of consolidating some of their brands apparently. And this is the Fabricator 252. You might remember that I did a video on the Fabricator 252 some time ago talking about MIG inductance and how setting high inductance makes the puddle wet out a little nicer sometimes for things like outside corner joints like that. It's a nice look. They're black, and they've done a lot of work on the carts and everything. They've got a really nice line of TIG welders now, a little improved line, 200 amp, 300 amp, and even higher industrial type units. And I really thought this was a cool unit. This is a 300 amp TIG inverter, AC/DC, with a cooler that fits right under it on a TIG cart, a caddy that holds a bottle. Got places for TIG wire and stuff like that. Really pretty slick. 300 amps. It is probably smaller than most 200 amps that have been around for a while. So I'm interested in learning more about that one. This is the Stronghand Tools booth. They've always got a very impressive display of all their clamping stuff, their modular fixturing and precision welding tables. And this is their new Build Pro Max setup here. So, you know how I got started learning about Stronghand tools. I bought a couple of these portable welding tables, little Nomad tables. They're really light duty tables. They're not anything you're going to pound on with a sledgehammer, but for doing a little quick welding job outside the door of a shop, like if you got to do some stick welding or some grinding and you want to get you don't want to mess up the floor of the shop, you can move this thing around really easily. And this particular job that I was doing, I also needed to tilt it up. So it tilts up and lets you get access to things that otherwise you'd have to kind of bend down. And it's really just a handy table. I've got 2 of them. I use them all the time still. Stop by the Aqua Saw Booth, which is all about purging stuff for stainless steel pipe and other alloys that need a purge. This is pretty cool. These are some inflatable bladders. Everything's got quick disconnects on it. And the bladders will work on 8 to 12 inch pipe. This is some purge tape, some aluminum foil purge tape that doesn't have adhesive in the middle, where it will gum up on the your stainless or Inconel pipe. And so that's a pretty cool product there. You know, sometimes you just use duct tape or whatever, and then you wind up getting gunky gum, and because it's hot, you're having to peel it back as you weld it to keep a purge on it. And you wind up getting adhesive in the weld, and so this is a pretty cool idea right here. Another thing is purge monitors are getting more and more affordable, and for doing high alloy stuff, especially for titanium, you really need a purge monitor, and these are able to set an alarm to go off when it reaches a certain threshold of parts per million. Now on stainless sanitary tubing like that, that's where stuff like this really comes in handy, because you got to get a good purge inside. Because for food service and beverage type work, you don't want any contamination inside where critters can grow and bacteria and stuff like that. Now this is doing a tiny little circular technique on this wall 2-inch tubing here. and no filler wire, just purging it, fitting it up, buttoning it up. Now that's what it looks like if you get a good purge. Pretty much nice and silver with almost zero discoloration. And that's the goal kind of on food service type work. Now I'm just a little hot on that weld there, but I want you to also check out this little light here. It's got a mirror attached to it. And that's pretty slick, because I've seen inspectors, I'm an inspector myself, and I've seen inspectors get all twisted up trying to hold a mirror in one hand and a flashlight in the other, and this just frees up one hand. Alright, I also stopped at the Abrasives booth. There's all kinds of abrasive booth there, but this particular demonstration caught my eye because it was an aluminum grinding disc that was just hogging off aluminum like crazy. So that definitely caught my eye, because some jobs you got to do a lot of aluminum blending, and either going to use beeswax or bar soap or something like that, which is fine. Not always the best thing if you got to weld back over it, but it's fine. So this is a typical job where you have to do a little aluminum blending. Boat prop or boat propeller repair. Fairly common repair, as long as you don't have to do too much to be worried about balancing and all that kind of stuff. I'm using a piece of copper backing there to do two things. Number one, to keep the weld metal from rolling over, and to trap the argon gas and make it weld cleaner. And that is a good way to do a repair like this. I'm using 40-43 filler metal. Probably could be using one size bigger, but I think that particular day I used what I had. So there's a lot of jobs like this. There a buildup of aluminum beads that then have to be blended or sanded back off. And so again, in this case, I used about an 80 grit sanding disc with a little wax on it, some wax lubricant used for a bandsaw, and then followed up with a little Scotch-Brite pad there, and that was pretty much ready for paint there. Another thing there were quite a few displays of were cutoff wheels, diamond cutoff wheels, designed for cutting metal like this. This is a piece of angle iron. It's zipping through that, nothing flat. Now these are much more expensive than normal cutoff wheels with the grit, but also last a whole lot longer, and I'm sure there's some benefits. So I'm going to see if I can get a sample or two of that and try it out and talk about that in some future videos. There's all kinds of abrasives at the welding show. Lots of booths showing things like these trimmable flap discs. You can put them against a piece of metal on the edge and trim them, so you can always have kind of a fresh edge, and that does make a difference. They get to where the edge doesn't really cut much, and then you've still got a lot of abrasive left, but it's not cutting because you don't have an edge. I thought this was pretty cool. This Avani downdraft fume extractor that accepted these strong hand type clamps here. I'm pretty sure those are strong hand clamps, but they look really handy to hold down the piece you're grinding on. Alright, the Profacts Lenco booth was pretty interesting. One of the things that caught my eye was the pre-made extension cord, like that big thick extension cord for like a 230 volt. That's something that I could definitely use. The longest one I've got is about 10 or 15 feet, and I'll be checking that out. Their positioner here looks pretty sweet. I've used several different benchtop type positioners like this. I really like the quick chuck there, and the pipe rollers are something that I could definitely use from time to time, and this has really caught my eye. These old school looking spool guns, but what I learned was they're almost indestructible, but they're not really old school. They got some new technology inside. Like there's one model that has a electronic board inside that kind of eliminates the need to have the card in the machine as far as the switching on and off and stuff like that. So some more positioners, some really small benchtop positioners here from the MK Products booth. That's a little aircrafter model. These really come in handy for people that are making a little bit of money on the side doing welding jobs. Sometimes it's definitely worth it to get a little positioner. I also stopped by the Gentek booth, who also offers pretty affordable positioners like this pipe roller, motorized pipe roller there. I did some build up on some stainless steel shafting a few months ago, quite a few of them, and quite a lot of welding where I was rolling them just in a set of V blocks. So having some pipe rollers like that would have, if you had a lot of that to do, would really come in handy, because there was quite a bit of welding. This was some stainless steel rollers that went on some type of conveyor, and they just got screwed up somehow or another, mismachined or something, and needed a bunch of weld put on there to be remachined off. So if you're doing work for money, it's very much worth it sometimes to get some type of inexpensive positioner. This is a Gentek welding lathe. I actually have a setup similar to this one. Had it disassembled at the time I was doing that though. This is a cool little helmet here for getting in tight spots. It's a really cut down helmet but with leather attached to it. Someone asked me recently about a helmet for tight spots, and that might be one to try out. Looks like it holds an auto darkening cartridge. Alright, SafT cart. This is cool. This might give somebody some ideas for building a welding cart too. This is an oxyacetylene cart where the tips and everything can be locked up, and the gauges go in that vented area where that can be locked up, and then on the other side of the cart you got braided stainless hoses that hook up to the cylinders. Just a pretty cool looking gee whiz thing. I thought it was, who doesn't like aluminum tread plate stuff anyway. Okay, the Aqua Saw Booth E3 tungsten is the hot topic these days. It's supposed to be an all-purpose electrode that good for AC and DC welding, and I've done some testing on it as well as some other electrodes where I pumped them up to 200 amps and on off several times, and then did some AC as well. I'll be showing that in the near future on which ones held up better. I used E3 as one of them and several others to compare it to. Now, tip TIG is an industrial TIG welding process. It's expensive. It's not something you're going to have in your garage, but I thought it would be interesting for folks to learn about anyway if you haven't heard of tip TIG. It is a modified hot wire TIG process, meaning the filler wires got current as well, and about 12 volts and 70 or 80 amps is what I heard. And by adding current to the filler as well as agitating the filler metal, and that breaks up surface tension in the puddle, they're able to achieve some pretty amazing results, like this titanium joint here that was done without a trailing shield. So having welded quite a bit of titanium myself, that got my attention there. So tip TIG is something that you'll probably be hearing more and more about in the future. I also stopped by the display for Lincoln's Vertex Virtual Welding Simulator. The AWS is towing a trailer around with this thing, and they're towing it to county fairs and whatnot, trying to get young people involved in welding, and it's pretty cool for that. It's like a video game, and it reads out a score on arc length, work angle, travel speed, and all that kind of stuff. And hey, if it gets some young people exposed to welding, I think it's a good idea. Alright, stopped at this booth. They have a product called the TIG brush. Now this is nothing new, this electrolytic process for removing heat tint from stainless steel, but this product is unique in the fact that it uses a bristle brush instead of like a cotton swab or felt or something wrapped around an electrode. And the bristles of the brush will be able to get into a lot more little nooks and crannies than you might otherwise be able to. So this is just an option for removing heat tint from polished stainless and things like that, where doing it mechanically would just screw it up. Alright, pretty cool product. Now this is submerged arc welding. This is just for people that wonder what it is. Not something you're going to have in your garage, but submerged arc welding is a very high deposition, uses large diameter wire, high welding currents, and it welds underneath a pile of flux, so you can't even see the arc. Well, that is the wrap up for Fabtech highlights. Next week I should get right back into the welding stuff. Like I've got this project going on, these really thick pieces of high strength steel I'm going to weld that need a preheat. So meanwhile, feel free to go visit weldmongerstore.com. Get ready for Christmas.